Hello, this is a story about a very old-fashioned form of transport. It was the day of the grand ball, and everyone had gone to the prince's palace to feast and dance until dawn. Everyone except poor Cinderella. Her wicked stepmother and two sisters had gone to the ball, but they had told Cinderella she had to stay behind, make all the beds and plump up all the pillows for when they came home. She had done all this, and now she was sitting by the fireside, sobbing miserably, saying to herself, "I wish I could go to the ball and meet the prince and dance until dawn." And she was feeding a few crumbs of cheese to a little mouse as she said this. But she didn't realize that it wasn't only the little mouse who was listening. No, there was somebody else. Yes, you've guessed it. It was the fairy godmother. Well, not quite the fairy godmother, because you see, it was the fairy godmother's day off. But the fairy godmother's apprentice, Dolores, was listening. And when she heard Cinderella's wish, she popped out and said, "Hello, Cinderella, you shall go to the ball." "Gosh, who are you?" said Cinderella. "I'm Dolores," she said. And Dolores, you see, she had been studying how to do magic ball gowns, and she'd passed all her exams in this, so she was very eager to try it out on a real wish. So she looked Cinderella up and down. "No, this will never do," she said, as she looked at Cinderella's old rags. "You need sparkle, you need sequins, you need pizzazz." And she whipped her wand through the air and ping! Cinderella's dress transformed into a beautiful ball gown, all blue and silver and sparkling. And Dolores was pleased. And Cinderella, well, she skipped off to the door, ready to go to the ball. But when she got to the door, it was pouring outside with rain, and the yard was all full of muddy puddles. "No," said Dolores, "this will never do. You need some transport. You need a carriage." And Dolores went looking around the yard, and there was an old flat cart with wheels and the shafts where horses would once have been put in. That was how people got around in those days, in carriages. But Dolores hadn't studied how to conjure up carriages yet. But she did know how to make things bigger. "Cinderella," she said, "have you got something carriage-shaped that we can put on top of this old flat cart, and I can make it bigger?" Well, Cinderella looked around the kitchen, and she found an old wooden box. So they put that on the cart. And Dolores whipped her wand, and ping! There was a beautiful wooden carriage. And Cinderella skipped around it to get in. "Where's the door?" she said. "Bother," said Dolores, "I forgot the door." Ping! And she made the box small again, and they took it off. "I'll never be able to cut through the solid wood," she said. "Have you got something else?" Cinderella looked around the kitchen, and she found a biscuit tin. "Right," said Dolores, "that's kind of carriage-shaped. Now get a knife and we'll make the door before we begin." Well, Cinderella got a bread knife, and they tried to cut through the biscuit tin, but do you think it worked? "No." "No," said Dolores. "We need something else, and it has to be waterproof for the rain." Well, Cinderella was really getting quite anxious by this stage, for time was getting on and she thought she would never get to the ball. But she looked around again, and there was an old football. That was waterproof. So they got the football and some scissors, and began to cut a door into the football, but it deflated and went pop the moment the scissors went through it. "No," said Dolores, come on, there must be something else." And then Cinderella had a brilliant idea. She looked around again, and she saw something that was waterproof and something they could cut through easily. Yes, it was a pumpkin. And they got a knife, they cut the top off, they put a little door and windows in it. And then they placed the pumpkin on the old cart, and Dolores whipped her wand through the air again, and there was a beautiful pumpkin-coloured, pumpkin-shaped pumpkin carriage. And then she whipped the wand over the little mouse, and the mouse became as big as a horse, and they put it in the shafts, tied it with the ropes at the front of the carriage, and off Cinderella went to the ball. And as she went, she waved at Dolores. "Thank you," she said, "thank you. Now I can go to the ball and dance until dawn." And Dolores was pleased with all her own work and said, "Yes, Cinderella, just make sure you're home before midnight."